Work. Good evening and welcome to UK Crime Book Club. And I'm really hoping that everybody can see us and that we can have a uneventful chat tonight where everything goes to plan. Because last night the technical gremlins weren't playing with me, so yeah, hopefully we'll have a smooth evening, Tom. So I'm delighted to invite Tom Mead to be here with us this evening. This is the fourth time that I've had the pleasure of chatting to Tom, and Tom is going to be talking about his fantastic latest book, The House at Devil's Neck, which is out today.
It is indeed. Hi, Karen, and hello, folks. Thank you for tuning in.
So Tom, would you like to introduce yourself and your book or series, whichever you would like to do? Because this is the fourth, isn't it, in your Joseph Spector series, but can be read as a standalone right as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Well, as you say, this is the fourth book in my series. It's a Golden Age inspired locked room mystery. So if you're a fan of Agatha Christie, who remains a favorite of mine, and things like Jonathan Creek, which is a show that I love that use stage magic as a backdrop for a locked room mystery plotting, then hopefully this will be your cup of tea. I think it's a good entry point for the series. So even if you've not read the others, you can dip in wherever you'd like, really. But the first book, which came out in the UK in 2023, was Death and the Conjurer, and that introduced Joseph Spector, who is my series sleuth. He is I suppose he's kind of an archetypal vintage whodunit detective, as in he's an eccentric amateur sleuth in the mold of so many from the 30s and 40s, like your Hercule Poirot's, your Dr. Gideon Fell, Ellery Queen, this type of character, a very well delineated archetype, if you like. But I thought to make this character somewhat different and to make him stand out from the crowd, he is a retired music hall magician and he solves seemingly impossible crimes. So he uses his knack for stage gimmickry and trickery and illusions to try and unravel these seemingly impossible crimes. And this time around, in The House at Devil's Neck, it's 1939, and we are just on the very cusp of the Second World War. And the house of the title is an old hospital. It served as a hospital in the First World War, and it's now a sort of derelict mansion, very precariously perched at the end of this narrow causeway. So it's a very kind of gothic setting. I really tried to lean into the atmosphere of this one. It's loosely based on the real life O.C. Island, which I think also inspired Susan Hill writing The Woman in Black, her fictional Eel Marsh house. So it's one of those very kind of atmospheric coastal settings where there's a kind of beautiful bleakness to it. And I thought it would be perfect to locate the house at Devil's Neck there. And of course, to set it on a dark and stormy night with a motley group of travelers who find themselves stranded there, including Joseph Spector. And they're there to conduct a seance to try and summon the spirit of a First World War soldier who's ostensibly roams the halls of this derelict old hospital. So that's the premise. And as you can imagine, a string of bizarre murders begins to unravel, and Flint, who is Inspector Flint, who is Spector's sort of comrade in arms, if you like, he is working on a parallel investigation involving a locked room murder, which eventually dovetails with the business at Devil's Neck, and it all hopefully comes together in a satisfying way for the reader. So that's the basic pitch for The House at Devil's Neck.
I said to you before, I've read all of your books, and this one has been, I mean, I love them all, but this one I really love because I love the setting. I love a creepy house, but it's so much more. It's so much more than a creepy house. And I love the, you know, I was thinking of like the Sitterford mystery, you know, with the seance, and so that's
definitely.
Sort of,
That's
my husband just literally finished reading. Yeah,
that's a great reference point. I love that book. And I love Christie when she's in a sort of spooky mode, you know.
Yeah.
The Pale Horse is another one that has that kind of thread of something uncanny afoot, and all that kind of thing. I absolutely love it. And in this one, the house, like you say, the house is very prominent in the book. So I spent a lot of time building up the kind of fictional history of this house, and I think it kind of plays into the plot, and I suppose complements it, because of course it is essentially a theatrical backdrop. I've always likened these things to magic shows, and that's basically what this is. This book is essentially a kind of string of illusions all pieced together, hopefully unfolding from one to the other, that kind of thing. So you need a complementary backdrop, and hopefully that's what this house has become.
It has. I mean, it does, definitely. And I think, should we just talk about Joseph Spector a little bit more, and how he sort of came about? Because if you haven't read, like you said, he was a music hall magician, and he sort of him and Flint get together, don't they, in the first book?
Yeah.
And I think that I felt like Flint has learned a lot from him, and actually he says he refers to that, doesn't he, in this book? You know, he's sort of starting to try and, whereas in the beginning he's a bit like, what are you talking about? Now he's a bit more like, how would he think? You know, what would Spector do?
That's the idea, because I'm conscious that it is a series, even though the books are standalone mysteries. I mean, you don't have to, for instance, you don't have to read all of Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot novels in sequence. You can dip in and out, and I have always tried to go for that approach with these books. I think they can be read out of sequence or in sequence, but I think when you do read them in sequence, you hopefully see this I suppose this kind of camaraderie between Spector and Flint develop, and the idea this time round is that Flint is a bit more, well, like you say, he's evolved somewhat. Spector is kind of he doesn't change much. He remains a performer. He remains this kind of larger than life figure. But I thought to to mark the passing of time and the evolution of the series, I want to kind of build up some of these supporting characters like Flint, and hopefully give them a bit more inner life and a bit more a bit more substance when it comes to involvement in the plot. To begin with, Flint was very much the kind of Inspector Lestrade type of character, the sort of bumbling Scotland Yard man who is constantly foiled by the ingenious amateur sleuth, which is a very recognizable Golden Age mystery scenario, and is very fun. But obviously 4 books in, I'm conscious that, while these characters are recognizable types, as in their behaviors and things like that are familiar, that they're created out of an established formula. You also want to give them a level of life of their own, if you like. So that's the idea this time round.
I mean, I think I think he has become, I guess probably because I've read all the 4 books as well, you see the change in him, particularly. You know, he's quite, in the beginning he doesn't really understand Spector at all, does he? And he is quite quirky in his methods. So I think that's something that I really liked about both of them. But I like how they sort of, that he's been able to learn from him and grow from that. But also I think it's sort of I think Spector as well he sort of looks to Flint in a way as well, doesn't he now?
Yeah, I think so. the idea, because I tried something a bit different structurally with this one, in that we have alternating chapters, one dealing with Flint and his investigation in London, and the other dealing with Spectre out at this isolated house at Devil's Neck. And eventually you sort of see the way that the two parallel plot strands come together, and hopefully that's a kind of satisfying thing for the reader when all of a sudden Flint is also out at Devil's Neck, and things that, you know, the denouement begins to unfurl. Hopefully that's kind of a satisfying thing where you see how all the bits and pieces have been kind of interconnected all along.
Yeah, I'll come back to that, because I've got that as a question later on, so about how you sort of deal with that. But so I was looking at some of your research notes that that Sophie, your publicist, sent over, and I was really interested in the whole sort of ghost hunter, Borley Mansion, Borley Rectory. Sorry, how did that sort of? Because I mean, you do like the supernatural elements in the books, don't you? So,
I love it. Yes, yeah. I always think that there is a real tangible thread from the Golden Age all the way back to Edgar Allan Poe, one of the great authors of Gothic literature, and also Sheridan Le Fanu, both of whom wrote early, very significant and influential Locked Room mysteries, but are also famed for supernatural fiction. And to me, some of the most interesting crime and mystery fiction is infused with something fantastic, something uncanny. A ready example would be Conan Doyle's The Hound of the Baskervilles, which is essentially a Gothic novel, a Gothic supernatural novel, which for most of its duration is a seemingly supernatural, ghostly novel. And people like John Dixon Carr, whom I often mention as a role model, someone who really inspires me. He was a great master of atmosphere, and there are some books of his, like, for instance, The Burning Court, which is a standalone mystery that he published, which is a locked room mystery with a very brilliant, satisfying puzzle plot and all the clues and everything, but also a thread of the supernatural and something, you know, a hint of witchcraft or uncanniness afoot. And I think that's the perfect balance, really, particularly when you are leaning into the more heightened, theatrical, slightly surreal side of things, which I tend to do, and my favorite authors usually do the same thing. I often picture the scenarios and the characters with a kind of a Hammer horror Technicolor sheen to them, you know, and hopefully that comes across in the writing, but also in the plotting. It's I suppose it's about skirting the line between cliche, using familiar settings and characters, and trying to be a bit subversive and a bit creative with the familiar tropes that we all know.
Because I think you touched on it there about the visual, and I think this book is very visual. And I particularly sort of going right back to the beginning of the book when they're on the coach trip, and you start to get to know this group of, as you call them, motley crew. And they're a very I think I put in my review, a very interesting bunch of characters.
They are very.
You've got a medium, you've got a magician, you've got some people that you don't know who they are or why they're there.
Yes, you've got a ghost hunter. Crucially, you've got a ghost hunter. You mentioned about Borley Rectory and Harry Price. Now,
because I hadn't heard of him. I was going to say, you said you call it the Harry Price. I can't. You give it a name, don't you, in the book? The Harry Price something.
Well, Harry Price is interesting to me. He was a very famous ghost hunter. He died in 1948, I believe. So, but during sort of the first half of the 20th century, he was a great self-publicist, self-promoter, and he set himself up as this kind of go-to figure in the study of parapsychology, and whenever there was a tabloid story or some sort of media event around the supernatural, he would always be front and center.
Yeah.
He wrote things like case books of ghost hunting, and he had these kind of ghost hunting kits and it would go to um, ostensibly haunted locations, much like the house at Devil's Neck.
Yeah.
And he would set up kind of traps around the place. And I decided that was a fun
Yeah.
way of establishing my locked room impossible crime scenario by using some of his ghost hunting kits around this fictional house. So he would have these bizarre contraptions with strings and bells around the place to try and capture if there was any movement, any hint of something otherworldly. And so I use that in this to set up one of the impossible crime scenarios. And you mentioned Borley Rectory as well. Now, that was famed as supposedly the most haunted house in England. It was destroyed by fire in early 1939. And I make reference to that in the book. But Harry Price and various other people had written books about this location. And so I decided to use it as kind of a template of sorts for the house at Devil's
Yeah.
Neck. The house itself is very different, but a lot of the stories about it are kind of freely adapted and suggested by some of the real life tales about Borley Rectory. And Harry Price is he's an influence on one of the characters, the ghost hunter, whom I mentioned. But Price is cropped up in fiction quite a lot already, and they did a TV drama about him, where
Oh,
he was
right.
played by Rafe Spall. It was very good, I thought, and a series of novels by Neil Spring, which fictionalized Harry Price, the ghost hunter. Now, I have a very admittedly tenuous personal connection to Harry Price, in that my grandmother used to work for Harrop's publishing house in London in the 1940s, and they issued a number of his books. So she met him on a number of different occasions, and she told me a lot about him. He loomed large in my imagination when I was young, because she had great fun relaying some of the ghost stories of
Yeah, that's
Borley
amazing.
Rectory and that kind of thing. So he's always been the kind of he's always been a figure who stimulated my imagination. So I suppose that this book is a kind of natural progression from that as well.
So was he back in that time? Was he sort of taken seriously? Was it because like now
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like some of the programs that come on Channel 5 about ghost
Yeah.
hunting and stuff,
Yeah.
and they're really taken with a big pinch of salt. I'm sure some people who go on there are very
Yes.
but so was he were the
Well,
public more open to it then or not
it's
really?
interesting. I don't know really how convincing a lot of Harry Price's work was, but he was, I suppose, the most significant aspect of his kind of public persona was that he endeavored to impose a degree of scientific rigor on what he was doing, which as I suppose, evolving from these famous phony mediums who were, spewing ectoplasm and having weird lights and knocking on tables and all this kind of stuff. He was seen as kind of a more modern approach to studying the paranormal. So I don't know how seriously. I mean, inevitably, skeptics would remain unconvinced. But he was somebody who at least attempted to, I suppose, interrogate the study of the supernatural rather
Yeah.
than. But having said that, he was very much a self-promoter, and he was very adept at that. But it becomes an interesting question of how much of it he himself really believed. But
Yeah.
but of course, I don't know the answer to that. I just think it's an interesting thing to think about and to write about. So yeah, he certainly influenced part of the house at Devil's Neck, and a significant part of it.
Yeah. So the first murder happens, which Flint comes to, and I think we can. I don't think that's a spoiler, is it really, to say
No,
that?
no. It begins with a murder which is in London.
Yeah.
And this is, well, I say a murder, it's one of these crimes which has the appearance of a suicide. So it's a
Yeah.
locked room scenario where this individual has supposedly committed suicide with a revolver in a locked study. So it's a classic locked room mystery setup. It seems that there's no way anyone could have got in or out. It's a a textbook suicide. And to add to that, Flint and several of his subordinates are actually outside the property when the incident occurs, and so they are there as witnesses to confirm this. But when Flint gets into the scene of the crime and starts to examine things, like you said, he's starting to channel some of Joseph Spector's, I
Yeah.
suppose, his kind of eye for things that are a little bit off, a little
Yeah.
bit unusual. And so he begins to ask questions as to, was this really what it appeared to be?
Mm.
Or is it a kind of a stage set, a backdrop to a faked suicide that is really a murder? And if so, how could that have happened? Who could have done it? But more importantly, how could they have pulled it off?
Mm.
And all of this leads him to kind of do a bit of digging into the past to find out more about this person, this individual who is now a cadaver in this locked study, and it all leads back to this strange mystery from the past, which so I suppose that's the setup for that plot strand, if you like. And
Mm.
then at the other end of things, we have Spectre, who is on this trip out to the house at Devil's Neck with a psychic medium who is very much in the mold of the conventional spiritualist medium who came to prominence, I suppose, throughout the Victorian era, but also in the aftermath of the First World War. These very kind of flamboyant Madame Arcati type mediums who were very self-consciously eccentric and all that kind of thing. And she and Spectre are kind of bête noire, I suppose, because he is there as a skeptic to try and catch her out. And then we have a few other people, including the ghost hunter. We
Yeah.
have the medium's assistant, her young assistant, who is there and who's got some kind of buried secrets of her own.
Yeah.
And so they go to conduct this séance, which leads to another murder, and then another murder after that. And as I say, then these two plot strands, Flint and Spectre, eventually come together, and you
Yeah.
realise that it's all part of a very elaborate tapestry. At least that's the idea.
Well, because it is, and there's so many. So there's mysteries within mysteries, isn't there? So you've got links to the Titanic. You've got links to sort of war, to the hospitals,
Yes,
and I was really interested how you sort of tie it all up, because when you've got like your thread from from Flint, and you've got your thread from, and you're bringing those together, but there's a lot of other things going on which I can't give away.
Yes, it's true.
There's a lot of other things going on in the background, and then you think, and when I get to the end, I think, how did you do that?
Well, that's the idea. That's the effect I'm going for. So I'm pleased if you had that reaction, because you want it to feel, I suppose, like Well, I talk about magic shows, and really, a magic show is about segueing from one trick to the next without giving you too much time to scrutinize them in any depth. It's
Yeah.
about kind of sweeping you along, and then at the end, hopefully, you get a kind of a feel of satisfaction of seeing all of these moving parts coming together. That I'm very conscious of that. And you
Mm.
mentioned things like the Titanic. Um, there are parts of the plot which are inspired by real life incidents, and that is a case in point. Um, Now, John Dixon Carr wrote a very great book called The Crooked Hinge, which is, I think, one of the masterpieces of mystery fiction. And that is a book which was inspired by the story of the real life tick-borne claimant, who this was a scandal, I suppose, in the 19th century, where somebody who had supposedly been killed and lost at sea in a shipwreck resurfaced in order to claim an inheritance and a title in a landed gentry
Mm.
family. And there became a huge legal dispute around this because it was years later, and of course there was considerable discussion as to was this the real individual or was it an imposter, and that inspired a part of the Crooked Hinge, which in turn inspired an element of the House at Devil's Neck. And Carr wrote about he sort of moved the tick-borne claimant case forward in time, and so I decided to do the same thing and to use the Titanic as the surrogate for the
Mm.
real life sinking, which led to the tick-borne claimant mystery. And yes, another element which inspired the House at Devil's Neck, and which also comes from the Crooked Hinge, is the use of an automaton, a kind of a weird mechanical figure which is based on the likes of the famous chess playing automaton from the 19th century, which Edgar Allan Poe wrote about, so-called Mazel's chess player, also known as the Turk, which was it was a big fraud, a hoax, really. This
Mm.
idea that you could create an automaton that could beat players at chess. And Carr was evidently fascinated by it. It was something that was, I suppose, adjacent to the world of stage magic and illusion, because it was gimmickry in the kind of P.T. Barnum sense, you know? And uh, so I decided it was about time I put an automaton into one of the Spectre mysteries, because these kind of mannequins, these sinister humanoid mannequins, are
Mm.
very well. They really suit the aesthetic and the kind of gothic feel of what I'm going for.
Yeah.
But also the automaton in this is different to the chess player. He is more the one in this is more like a kind of a ventriloquist dummy almost. He's a kind of amalgam of some. There's a movie, a Dario Argento movie called Deep Red, Profondo Rosso, from the mid 70s, which is a giallo horror mystery movie, and which features a very creepy Clockwork Boy, which is an inspiration for the automaton. And then there are a few other things, like Darren Brown used one in a stage show a few years ago, and things like that. So it seemed, sometimes an image will stick in your mind, and you'll think that there needs to be a place for it in
Yeah.
uh, in the mystery. And in this case, it made sense because we have the automaton who has a part to play in the séance, but who also, as part of the locked room mystery, uh, to me, one of the kind of creepy elements of the plot is that when the crime is discovered, and we have this this locked room murder scenario, the automaton is mysteriously and inexplicably there in the room when it wasn't before. And so it's one of these kind of uncanny scenarios, which to me just amplifies the gothic feel of it. So yeah, it's I suppose it's all really about pursuing that effect, which comes from atmosphere as much as it does from the kind of logical aspects of the plotting, I suppose.
Yeah, because I think, I mean, there's definitely something. I've always found ventriloquist dummies very creepy. I don't like clowns either, so I think there's something. But even like, what's the one? There's the kids' book Goosebumps that's got the the weird sort of dummy thing. I can't remember what it's called.
Slappy, Night of the Living
Slappy, that's
Dummy.
it. Yeah,
That's it. Yes, I remember that very well. And well, I mean, there's a whole kind of subset of supernatural and gothic and horror fiction revolving around these things. I'm fascinated by Sigmund Freud's uncanny, his principle of the uncanny, this idea that what really scares us, the kind of root of our fears and anxieties, is that which is both familiar but different. And that, to me, that epitomizes the automaton, the mannequin, things which have a humanoid face, but it's not human.
But
And
it's
people
not
talk
human.
about, people talk about the uncanny valley, where you will have, animated characters which are so realistic, and yet there's something crucially missing. And to me, that is the essence of the uncanny in the Freudian sense. And I think that's why I find the imagery of, well, I suppose it ties into the idea of masks as well, which are an important theme in this book.
I was going to come on to that,
yeah, because it's all about a particular mask, which is a portrait mask, a mask that was created to in an endeavor to restore the features of a disfigured First World War soldier. And so, and this was obviously, it was a famous practice that was pioneered in the First World War, when so many soldiers were returning home with these hideous disfiguring injuries that were so, so kind of unprecedented. People hadn't really seen anything like it before in medical history. And it was an attempt to enable these soldiers to kind of integrate back into society at post-war. And so these portrait masks have a very poignant history. But what struck me as interesting about these masks compared to other masks is that obviously the idea of a mask is about concealing an identity. It's about deception or impersonation. But the opposite is true with these portrait masks. They were designed to restore the identities of these soldiers. So that struck me as an interesting kind of subversion of a familiar trope. And of course, deception and impersonation. These are the stock in trade of the classic whodunit. So using this particular mask as both a symbol that represents the kind of overhanging shadow of the First World War, and also the looming horror of the Second World War, but also using it on a more practical level as part of the mechanics of the locked room mystery plot. So hopefully it fulfills a few different purposes within the story on different levels, I suppose.
You literally said, because I'd written down the masks are very creepy, but they had a very poignant use in the war.
Yes.
I was interested in the sort of, did you do any research about how they were used, and were they used a lot? Was it a big part of the, because I mean, I think like you said about masks being like that sort of hiding, I'm thinking like Phantom of the Opera, which was he wore that as a bit like that mask really to cover up a disfiguration.
Yes.
But also as a disguise as well.
Yes. Well, as I say, it was a practice that was pioneered really in the First World War, and there were surgeons. They called it the tin noses shop in the kind of jocular way, because the idea was these. It was kind of a workshop, really, manufacturing these masks. And there is the one that's described in the book is based on a real one. And what they would have is, it wasn't like a mask as we might understand it. It would
No.
have arms like these glasses, and
So
so you would
put it behind.
effectively take it on and off like that.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so very poignant, as you say, to see this kind of thing, and
Mm,
to think about the ramifications of it. And so it struck me that this would be a potent
mm,
artifact to use in a séance, something with great emotional significance that
yeah.
somebody who was a fraudulent medium would pounce on, as something to be exploited, you know.
Yeah.
So, but then of course the mask can also be worn by somebody as a disguise, and that also happens in
Yeah.
House of Devil's Neck. So yeah, so I suppose masks generally are an important theme, whether they are literal, as in the case of this portrait mask, or whether it's about impersonation or
Yeah.
adopting of a false identity, and the identity trick, which is something that I always love.
Yeah.
And I love coming up against it as a reader, and I love incorporating it into the Spectre plots.
I think I think it's definitely something, because it's not something that, again, I'd come across before, and I really like that in a book, because I think being able to sort of your books are almost like an education as well, so you're sort of learning learning
Well,
about all this stuff as well.
it's
It's
kind of
great.
you
I
to
love it. I
say.
love being able to
Yeah.
Google. I'm like, oh, I'll Google that, I'll have a look at that. um but so do you think, which of the characters do you think that you enjoyed writing the most in this book? Which one was the one that stood out? Was the one that you really struggled with?
That's a good question, because I usually try to find something that I like writing about all the characters, which I suppose is that's the name of the game. Really, is about
Mm,
um, making these characters accessible, even if you don't like them. You want to go on reading about them. So even the less likable characters, you want to try and make them interesting and entertaining. I always enjoy writing about Spectre, of course, because he's my series
yeah,
detective, and he's kind of me living out my vicarious
yeah,
fascination with stage magic by creating this person who is stage magic personified, if you like.
yeah,
I think one of my favorites is the medium that I've already talked about,
yeah,
Madame Lamotte.
yeah.
She
Madame
is,
Lamotte. Yeah,
yeah, I love her, because she's another very gregarious, um, over the top, larger than life character to write
mm,
about, and who a lot of whose mannerisms and her look and everything about her is derived from real life people. She's not based on a specific individual, but
no,
certain elements of her act, if you like, in putting on the seance comes from various books that I've read. There was a good book by Lisa Morton about the history and practice of seances, and then there was another good book called The Table Rappers, which was about it was just about the practice of seances, and
yeah,
it comes at the subject from various different angles, so it gives you an insight into how the trickery was achieved.
mm,
So from a technical point of view, but also I suppose the kind of emotional manipulation that went into the performances.
yeah,
So a fascinating reading, and I tried to channel all of it into this particular character who, as I say, yeah, she was particularly fun to write. And I also like her assistant, Imogen, who
I like
is,
Imogen. Yeah,
yeah, she's, you know, she's, I suppose, the closest we have to a kind of an ingenue, a sort of young, a young protagonist in this
Yeah.
strange plot. I had something similar with Ibs, the lawyer in The Murder Wheel, my
Yeah.
second book. He was this kind of young, slightly naive character who gets roped into all this. And I thought, well, Imogen is a bit different. She's got her own reasons for being there.
Yeah.
But I wanted the reader in the first instance to think that she's this kind of it's this similar kind of young, impressionable character, when in fact she's got secrets of her own. So she's fun as well.
Yeah. I think that I mean it's quite a feat to sort of have, you know, a lot of characters. Do you find that a challenge when you're, because obviously you've got your stables with your Flint and Spectre, but do you find, because you do have quite a big cast of characters, do you find that's a
Yeah.
challenge, or do you, I mean, you generally do though, don't you, in your books?
Well, yeah, I tend to think of it. I mean, I've likened it to a game of chess before, where you have your pieces lined up, and when one moves, then that affects the directions that others can move, you know, and so you have to kind of focus on all your pieces at once.
Yeah.
But I try to make it as accessible and easy to follow as possible for the reader by including the dramatist persona at the beginning, so that if need be, you can flip back and remind yourself who's who. That is something that I wish more mystery novels did that. I think it would make it a lot easier for the reader. So I've always loved books that do that, and I always make a point of doing it with the Spectre ones.
Yeah, I really
Um,
like it. I like it just going, because you do forget when you're,
yeah,
you
of
know, when
course.
you're reading along, and then, you know, you got like go to page 18 or showed on page 18, and you're like, right, okay, I'll go back and have, oh yeah, yeah, I remember that
Oh
now.
yeah, I like the clue finder as well, which this is another classic golden age thing of having the page references, like you mentioned, so that when you get to the denouement and Spectre is unraveling everything that's gone on. Obviously, it's very much self-consciously a complex plot. It needs to be for the mystery to work and to have a kind of payoff. So, but you don't want the reader to be so bemused by what's going
No.
on that they can't follow it. So I like to put in page references so that you can flip back and see where the clue was that you missed
Yeah.
first time round, or if you didn't miss it, you can look at it and think, aha, I knew there was something going on there.
Yeah.
But the idea, I suppose, that fulfills a kind of dual purpose. It makes I suppose it makes it a bit more interactive for the reader, as in you
It
have
does.
to
Yeah.
engage intellectually with the mechanics of the plot. You can't just kind of race through it necessarily. I mean, you
No.
can, but if you want to engage with it as as a puzzle mystery,
Yeah.
then you can go through it that way. But also, I suppose it's kind of me showing my working so that nobody can accuse me of not playing fair.
No.
I like to make sure that you can see, yeah, the clues were there. I
Yeah.
didn't try and, I didn't spring anything on you that wasn't
No, that we haven't already
tucked
been
away.
given. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the idea behind that. Really, it's something that a few Golden Age writers have done. I particularly am aware of it in Ellery Queen books, but John Dixon Carr did it once or twice, and it's something that pops up in a few Golden Age novels, and Martin Edwards does it in his Rachel Savanake books, but he does it a bit differently. Um, what he does is he has the clue finder at the end with the clues listed with the page reference.
Oh,
So
really?
he
That's
doesn't
really
have the
interesting.
footnotes like I do.
Yeah.
But uh, but it's in both cases it's sort of born out of the same thing. It's very much a golden age trope.
Which leads me nicely onto my next question, which is, you are very well read in golden age crime
Mm.
and that sort of period. Have you discovered anybody recently that you hadn't discovered before? Because I know you
Mm.
read very widely.
Yeah, I do my best. I try to, particularly within the golden age world. I've been loving the well, I've talked about this a lot before and probably mentioned it to you previously, Karen, but I'm loving the spate of Japanese translations which are ongoing at the moment for
Yeah,
the likes of Pushkin Vertigo. And Yukito Ayatsuji's books, which are actually from the 80s, are, to me, they are brilliant examples of how you can take a Golden Age mystery setup and you can do something fresh with it.
yeah,
His book, The Decagon House Murders, which is, again, yeah, it's from about 1987, I think. And that is a book which is kind of in dialogue with And Then There Were None, because it uses a similar premise, but it relies on it plays on the reader's pre-existing knowledge of the Christie book, and so it becomes this kind of meta-fictional, very kind of postmodern exercise in mystery, and I think it's just brilliant work of real genius. But going back into the Golden Age,
mm.
at present, I am, well, I suppose more obscure names. I've been enjoying Elizabeth Daly. She is an American author who was supposedly a favorite of Agatha Christie.
Oh,
Agatha
interesting.
Christie, Agatha Christie, I think, favorably reviewed some of her work. But largely forgotten, though she did write a very long series of, I suppose, biblio mysteries featuring an antiquarian book expert as a detective. So they're very fun. The first one was Unexpected Night. I think my favorite is probably Evidence of Things Seen, which is a book that deals with ghosts, and it's a bit of a spooky one. So I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, that does
Uh,
sound fun.
yeah, it is good. And another one whom I talk about quite a lot, but she's brilliant. She is Gladys Mitchell, who wrote the Mrs. Bradley Mysteries,
Yeah,
very long running series. The first was, I think, 1929, with the last being 1983. So she
wow.
was writing for years and years. She wrote 60 plus books in this series. And she was so imaginative and so creative with her plots, and she was unafraid to go really off the wall with some of her ideas. I mean, she would have uh, witchcraft and stone circles and Wickermanish folk horror elements, and
Oh, I
she
love
would
the
have
sound of these. I think these are
she had,
great.
yeah, she had the Loch Ness monster in one of them. She had really mad stuff.
Really like out there.
Absolutely, and I admire that very much. I think uh, creativity, particularly within the established murder mystery
Yeah,
formula, is so is really to be treasured. And Gladys Mitchell was great. Her plots are not always the most rigorous, so they're not kind of meticulous Lockroom mysteries, but they got
no,
such a fun feel to them. You can tell she's having the time of her life, and
yeah,
when she's on form, she is definitely up there with the very best of the queens of crime, if you like.
yeah. That's another one for my list because I
Yeah.
do have the I think I've got a couple of the Japanese ones on the Hill House Murders and the Decadent
Oh
House
yeah,
Murders.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
the Millhouse
I've got
Murders. Well, that's interesting because the Millhouse Murders is Yukito Ayatsuji, and that is another one where a mask plays a prominent role. This is something that crops up quite a lot in Japanese crime
yeah.
fiction, and it definitely went away towards influencing the House at Devil's Neck. Another is the Inugami Curse by Seishi Yokomizo, which features a mask which is worn by a soldier who's been disfigured in combat, and
Mm.
so that certainly suggested part of the idea for this character. And there's one more. Oh yes, the No Mask Murder. So the title by Akimitsu Takagi. And that's about a cursed no mask, NOH, which is a very potent symbol in Japanese culture and mythology, and
Mm.
which has a fascinating part to play in a mystery. So yeah, it's a recurring theme in Japanese whodunits as well as contemporary golden age whodunits. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's I suppose it's a kind of a cocktail of all of these influences, really.
Do you how do you think, because we talked about it just before we came on, and I said that I thought this one was the best one yet, which you said was a positive because you want to grow. How
That's
do you think
kind of you, yeah.
how do you think your writing has changed across the series?
Well, I think I've become a bit more confident, I suppose, in what I'm doing,
Mm.
and I'm less wary about. Well, I'm less. I don't sort of hide behind the idea that it's a golden age pastiche,
No.
whereas with the earlier ones, I mean, they're all obviously tributes to the golden age whodunit. But I think I'm uh, less afraid to be a bit more, well, a bit more out there, like a Gladys Mitchell type
Like
within
Gladys,
that
yeah.
framework,
You're embracing
and
your
to
inner
be,
Gladys.
yeah, exactly, to be more playful, I suppose.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I suppose that's. I mean, with the last one, Cabaret Macabre, that was a retelling of the Revenger's tragedy, which was me trying to do something different in an established framework. And
Yeah.
well, it was very kind of you to say that you enjoyed this one. But inevitably, the idea as a writer, what you want, that's what you want to hear. You want to hear that your latest is the best one.
Is the best. Yeah.
You want to feel like you are progressing and developing. That's the idea.
Yeah. No, but I mean, as I said, I've enjoyed all of them, and I think they've got great characters. I really love the sort of the nods to other books and finding out about the information, all the information that comes with it, because it's so much more, that it's not superficial in any way. There's so much that goes into it, and you know that when you're going to pick up a book. So one of the things I was going to say to you about is at the beginning of all the chapters, there's quotes, isn't there? And I was really
Oh yeah,
fascinated about how you sort of curate those and choose which is going to go in, because I imagine
yeah.
there's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in some cases, they're kind of ironic comment of what goes on in the chapter. Sometimes they have a different purpose. But yeah, that I suppose that's kind of case in point, really, because some of them are from very obscure alchemical texts, and the Malleus Maleficarum and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I want to. I suppose, create a kind of a shortcut in the reader's mind that there's something very arcane going on and something with roots very deep in the past. And I thought one of the best ways to do that is to show via these allusions to real life texts about magic and Aleister Crowley and Dion Fortune and these figures who were performers, but who also had a penchant for the occult.
Mm.
So yeah, and also there are references to mystery novels, magic, and all the familiar subjects. So yeah, I suppose they are kind of snapshot into what I'm thinking as I'm writing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. I think so.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you sleep well at night? Or have you got lots of sleep? Because I've got, my question was going to be, what's next? Because are you?
Yeah. Well,
What,
I mean, with each of these books, they're entertainments, of course. I started writing them to entertain myself during COVID, during the COVID lockdowns. It was about escapism,
mm,
but I think the important thing is that you have to take the work itself very seriously, even if it's not always, even if it's in places it's tongue in cheek, or there's humor, or there's kind of an ironic slant to it. You have to take it very seriously yourself. You have to play it completely straight, if you like. um, and So it becomes a bit of a balance, really, between the performer, kind of showboating with
yeah,
various weird happenings and weird ingredients. Like we got the Titanic, we got the automaton, we got this
yeah,
haunted house, we got all these, throwing all these things at the wall, But it's also about having a kind of an underlying knowledge that every element of the plot has its place and there's a reason for everything. There are no accidents in a plot, or they shouldn't be. That's so I suppose that's my kind of philosophy that underpins the whole thing. So really it's about it's a craft, I suppose. It's I look at it as kind of your I look at it kind of like, clockmaking or something. Everything has to kind of fit together, and it can be quite a minute exercise, but when it works, it just ticks away nicely, and hopefully the reader won't see the workings of it. The reader should be kind of swept along by it, but I think you have to approach it like you have to approach it like a craftsman to achieve that effect. So yeah, I read a lot, and I read quite diversely, particularly when I'm in a research frame of mind. You asked about what's next. I am working on more Spectre. We've got various bits and pieces on the go at the moment. I am also doing other Lockroom mystery related projects. Like, for instance, I'm translating some French Lockroom mysteries for Bedford Square Publishing. So I'm kind of beavering away behind the scenes. But also, yes, more Spectre on the way. Not too much, I can say. But also, it's nice to see that things are progressing with the screen adaptation of Death and the Conjurer. So I'm hoping I'll have some more.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, I'm hoping I'll have some more news on that very soon. Hopefully before the end of the year, which would be great.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
So yeah. Well, what's next? I'm writing constantly, and I do have more Spectre in the pipeline, but nothing tangible that I can tell you about at the moment, except to say, except to say that it'll be both different and more of the same, because of course I've got my established characters, and inevitably there'll be a string of impossible mysteries. But it's about how they come to be, and and of course now we have the atmosphere of a wartime London, which I think will help to complement this new set of mysteries.
Yeah, sounds exciting. And I think as your readers, I think, we want more of the same, but different as well.
Yeah, exactly. Again,
we want Flint, we want Spectre, but we want other things too. So we're quite demanding, really.
Yeah, and I mean, this was not something that I thought about to begin with, because I was only writing for myself. But now that people do correspond with me and tell me they enjoy the books, which is lovely and wonderful, it's something that does linger in my mind when I'm working. Now I'm writing for more than just myself, but for other people, and I suppose it's about not wanting to disappoint people, but also to continue to evolve the series, create a kind of progression for the series, but also to scratch the familiar itch that that readers have for Lockroom mysteries. So that's the kind of plate spinning act that I'm working on at the moment.
I imagine that's the thing, isn't it? When you start off, you have that sort of, you're writing for you're writing for your own. But then when you become, published and popular, there is more pressure but I mean, obviously you need to stay true to what you write as well, and to yourself. So
yeah, exactly. So and this is all very uncharted territory for me. So I'm just trying to kind of negotiate it for myself, and it's a wonderful challenge. It's I like to, when I'm with writing, which is something that I have control over, in a world where everything seems out of control. In a world, in a fictional world, you have complete control over what happens, and it's nice within that fictional world to be challenged and to try and push your own boundaries of what you can write about. So yes, it's well, to me, that's the kind of joy of it, really. That's what I am enjoying doing at the moment, and will hope to continue doing in the Spectre series, and
Brilliant.
indeed in any other series that I might write in the future.
So we're just coming up to the hour now, and you've got some events coming up. You had one today, didn't you? Yeah.
Yes, I did. Yes, today publication day. So I did a launch day signing in Derby, which is where I live, at the Waterstones. That was a wonderful, a very successful event. It was lovely to see so many people, and to sell out of books was great.
Fantastic. Oh, that's amazing. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, so I've got a bunch of signings and things lined up over the next few weeks. I'm off to Hillingdon tomorrow for Manor Farm Library to do a coffee and crime event. My lovely friend Barbara Nadell, who writes she is going to be interviewing me.
Oh, amazing!
She's agreed to moderate and to interview me at a sort of launch event for the house at Devil's Neck. That's tomorrow. I'm told it's sold out, but you never know. There may be a couple of dropouts on the day. And then I've got some signings around the UK, particularly in the Midlands. So the Heath Bookshop in Birmingham. I'm going to be there the morning of the 21st of August. So pop along and say hello if you're in Birmingham or in the King's Heath area. And then I've got 1 or 2 festivals lined up. So I'm doing the Lincoln Book Festival. I'm doing a crime fiction panel there. And then I've got later in the year, in October, I have got Death in the Dales.
I've seen that advertised.
Which is with Martin Edwards, whom I've mentioned, M.W. Craven, Kate Ellis, Francis Brodie, so some real big names. So that'll be wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. I was meant to go last year, but then couldn't. So this will, it's been a long time coming.
Yeah. Oh no, brilliant. It sounds like you're having a whale of a time as well. Busy,
always.
but having a great time. Thank you so much for coming on again, Tom. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. And The House at Devil's Neck is out now. And if you've not read any of the Joseph Spector books, I urge you to go out and get this one, because it's fantastic. But all of the others are great as well. So, So we look forward to seeing you again on UK Crime Book Club soon.
Thank you very much, Karen. Lovely to chat
to you.
Thanks
a lot. Bye.
Bye.